It is officially week 3 fantasy football day today, and I have been saying this all week long. Week 2, after that, is the first real week that we have some information that we can really count on for the long run. And we've got a much better idea on who the best defensive plays in fantasy football are going to be this week. So today we need to go through the top 12 defenses in week 3 fantasy football. And at the end of this video, I will give a bonus defense for you to pick up and add right now if you have the roster space for next week. So stay tuned until the end to catch that defense right there. And I am also one of the only fantasy football YouTubers who actually even covers defense because I see the importance of it. So please make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel to show your support for the channel. It is greatly appreciated, guys. So let's go ahead and just dive right into these guys, man. The first here, you could literally interchange these. I don't care. We're talking literally splitting hairs here. I've got the 49ers defense at defense number 1, taking on the New York Giants tonight on Thursday Night Football. I've got the 49ers here really for one simple reason. I think this offense, again, versus the New York Giants, they're really predicated on one thing, and that's Saquon Barkley. So if Saquon Barkley can't go, and he's not, by the way, if you haven't seen the news, he's ruled out, this is over. It's not going to work for them. They've got nothing else going for them besides what Saquon Barkley did for them last week. This defense is going to slaughter the New York Giants this week. 4 interceptions, 6 sacks on the year. I mean, this defense is going to absolutely brutalize the New York Giants on Thursday Night Football. And like I said, we're literally splitting hairs here because I've got the Cowboys defense at number 2. And they've got just as good of a matchup against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona this week. I mean, simply put, the Cowboys defense is one of the few defenses I can really remember thinking is actually matchup proof. This defense is absolutely unbelievable. It's one of the best defenses I've seen in like a decade. Like, seriously. This defense is truly outstanding. 10 sacks in 2 weeks. 5 interceptions in 2 weeks. 2 fumble recoveries, 4 forced fumbles in 2 weeks, and they average 26 fantasy points per game. That makes a massive difference on your fantasy team. That's like having Travis Kelce at the tight end position. Who knows if it's going to keep up like that all season long. But I have full faith that this one keeps up just like that in week 3 against the Arizona Cardinals. There's no way that Dallas's defense is outside of the top 2 at this point. And like I said, if you want to put them at 1, be my guest because neither one of these defenses in tier 1 is a bad play. Moving down to our next tier here, we've still got some really good options here this week that I really like. We've got the Chiefs defense taking on the Chicago Bears in Kansas City this week. So the Chiefs defense this week, I think they're really just a defense that's underrated. I think a lot of people just don't give the Chiefs credit for how good defensively they are since they've always been such a powerhouse on offense with Patrick Mahomes. Well, actually, it's kind of been a little bit reversed this year. The Kansas City offense has sputtered through the first 2 weeks, and their defense has been what's kept them in a lot of these close games with top teams. They've had real teams that they've played. And the beautiful thing about this matchup is obviously you don't even need me to read these numbers because you already know Chicago's offense is not good, but I'm going to read them to you anyway. Chicago is once again near the bottom in the NFL in total points and total offense. On the other hand, the Kansas City Chiefs defense is top 4 in points allowed so far in 2023. And keep in mind, this is going up against opponents like the Detroit Lions in week 1 and the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 2. This is the first week they have a real easy cupcake matchup. I expect the Chiefs defense to be very good in fantasy football this week. Moving on to number 4, I expect them to be very good as well because everybody who plays the Houston Texans is in this mode. It's the Jaguars defense taking on the Texans this week. So Houston is bottom 5 in scoring offense right now. And that comes as no surprise at all. I mean, when you're talking about a team with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback, it's not a good combination. And they're both struggling offensively right now, and it shows. Every single week I have watched them, and it does not look very good offensively for the Houston Texans. And the Jaguars defense has actually been a little bit good this year. I mean, 9.5 fantasy points per game, 4 fumble recoveries, 4 forced fumbles, 5 sacks in 2 weeks. This defense is nothing to scoff at right here, but really this is a matchup play. Obviously, the Houston Texans, the reason that Jacksonville's defense is this high on the list right here. The Texans are middle in the pack as far as yards per game go offensively, but again, a lot of that has come from garbage time. And I can tell you that for a fact because the last 2 games, they've been out of the game very early and playing catch up late and getting a lot of garbage time. And that's really what the situation is with Houston. Jacksonville also has a top 10 scoring defense. This is a really easy matchup right here. It's an easy pick at number 4. Number 5, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles defense taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay this week. So honestly, this has been one of the biggest shocks of the year so far is how good Tampa Bay has been. I mean, Tampa Bay is 2-0. Who would have thought that coming into the season, especially when they played Minnesota in week 1. Now, they got a break because they played Chicago in week 1, but obviously the difference between how we feel about Minnesota now versus how we felt about them coming into the season is much different. It would appear that they haven't really gotten a real test yet since they've only played the Vikings and the Bears this year. It would appear that there's no real test that's been had here. So I think that this is going to be a reality check week for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're taking on a Philadelphia defense that has a very, very stout front 7. They've got playmakers all over that front 7, especially on the D-line. I think it's going to make it tough on Baker, and it's going to make it tough on the entire offense in general. And I honestly expect Philadelphia to bully the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. I've got Eagles at 5. Number 6, we've got the New England Patriots taking on the New York Jets in New York this week. Obviously, this is a situation where you just kind of hate that this matchup for fantasy football is probably not going to be very good. It's probably going to be a defensive slugfest right here. Now, what you can see on the screen is that the Patriots defense is not good statistically from a fantasy football perspective this year. They only have 5.5 fantasy points per game right now and only 4 sacks through 2 weeks. But also remember this, the New England Patriots have played 2 not just good opponents, like top tier opponents their first 2 weeks. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins. That's been their lineup the first 2 weeks. This is the first week where they're actually getting to play a bad offense. Obviously, the offense would be much different if Aaron Rodgers was there. Aaron Rodgers isn't there. So it's Zach Wilson-led New York Jets who just scored 10 points against the Dallas Cowboys. Belichick also has a history of eating up Zach Wilson. I think he's going to do it again in week 3. Number 7, we've got the Buffalo Bills defense taking on the Washington Commanders this week. In Washington, and honestly, this is a really hard situation because Buffalo's defense, it's honestly kind of hard to tell how good they are. You know what I mean? Like, if you think back to their 2 opponents that they've played this season, they've played very easy offenses. Like, they played against the New York Jets without Aaron Rodgers. And obviously, that defense that week was okay, but they still lost the game. And then also, the Las Vegas Raiders have not gotten it going yet either with Jimmy Garoppolo. So from that perspective, it's a little bit hard to tell exactly how good this defense is. But this week is kind of the same thing. Washington, they're playing against a team that's not that great offensively either. So there's a lot of issues here with Buffalo's defense, I think, that could come about later in the season when they start to play tougher opponents. But it's not that time yet. And Buffalo is a very comfortable defensive play for me this week once again. Number 8, we've got the Jets defense in that matchup against New England in New England. Like I said, I think this is going to be a defensive matchup here. New England no doubt has a great matchup versus the Jets offense, but the Jets defense has a very good matchup as well against the New England Patriots offense. This is not some explosive offense. Yeah, they've put up some points over the past couple of weeks, but really, what else is there to show besides a couple of late fourth quarter touchdowns from Mac Jones / Ramondre Stevenson? I think that the Jets defense is also excellent. I think that their defense is in the tier of teams like 49ers and Cowboys. I just don't think that their team morale is that high, and that affects defensive play. And so you saw last week against the Dallas Cowboys, when they were down big, they started to lose it. They were on the field for way too long, and then their defense just wore down. I don't think that happens this week with New England. I actually think that the Jets are going to be making this a very competitive game this week. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. It's going to benefit the Jets defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they come away with a couple of turnovers in this game. Number 9, I've got the Baltimore Ravens defense taking on the Indianapolis Colts in Baltimore this week. Now, this one is going to largely depend on Anthony Richardson's availability, but the reason I feel confident having the Ravens defense on here right now is because Anthony Richardson, as far as reports I've seen this week, and I'm filming this on Wednesday night, Anthony Richardson didn't practice this week, and he's expected to not play. So that means it's going to be Gardner Minshew time, who isn't a bad backup quarterback, but he's a backup quarterback. Let's get that straight. The Ravens defense is going to have a pretty easy week this week, I think. And I mean, you can see it. They've got 6 sacks through 2 weeks, and they get a lot more pressures than just that. They get after your quarterback. I think they're going to get after Gardner Minshew this week and have a really good fantasy week defensively. Number 10, we've got the New Orleans Saints defense taking on the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay this week. Now, the Saints have a very stout defense. I discussed this last week on my defensive rankings video, how I left them off that list I made in July in my top 12 defense rankings video, and it was a mistake. I mean, the New Orleans defense is very, very good. They're both physical up front, and they're athletic on the back end. This is a very talented defense. I'm interested to see how this one goes, honestly, because obviously Green Bay has done much better offensively than I think a lot of us thought they would before the season. I think that Green Bay is probably going to get their toughest test, though, defensively versus the New Orleans Saints, so I'm interested to see how Jordan Love and company react to that. And I've got the Saints on here comfortably because they're a great defense. Number 11, the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas. This is easily the most hot and cold defense in the entire league. One week, they are abysmal against the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, a much better team than the Cleveland Browns were last week, but they were still just like embarrassingly bad defensively. And then obviously last week, 2 defensive touchdowns versus the Browns. Unbelievable. Unbelievable how they could just flip a switch like that. And honestly, the only reason they're here on this list is because they can create turnovers. That's the reality with the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They've got playmakers up front for sure, even without Cam Hayward. They've got Watt and they've got Highsmith, who are both very, very good complementary pass rushers to one another. So I think that the only reason they're on here, like I said, they can create turnovers, and Jimmy Garoppolo is known for doing that right here. But again, keep this in mind. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense, if you want to think that they should be higher, remember this. The Steelers defense is dead last through 2 weeks against the run. Dead last, and that includes going up against a backup running back in week 2. I smell a Josh Jacobs breakout this week. Just keep that in mind if you've got Josh Jacobs. Moving on to our number 12 defense, rounding it out, is the Seahawks defense taking on the Carolina Panthers at home in Seattle this week. Now, Seattle's defense is here simply because of matchup. I mean, this is a team that I do not trust defensively on any other week-to-week basis, really. But Carolina is dead last in scoring offensively. They can't move the freaking ball. They can't score the freaking ball. This offense is bad right now. Really, really bad. But again, Seahawks defense is nothing special. 2 sacks through 2 weeks, 7 fantasy points per game average. This is not a special defense right here, and it really kind of looks like it might have regressed a little bit from last year. But the matchup is just too good to leave Seattle off this list. And as promised, my bonus defensive ad, if you are in a deeper league and if you have the roster space, the defense that you should add in preparation for next week that is on waivers here is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Carolina Panthers, who we just discussed. Now, it would be really easy for me to say, yeah, the 49ers defense is great next week. The Cowboys defense is great. Even a team like the Steelers defense is great going up against the Houston Texans, but they're on my top 12 list right now. So the likelihood that they'll be available on your waiver wire this week is not very high. The team that I had to go with is a team that's very low percentage rostered here, and the matchup is excellent. Now, let's not act like Minnesota's defense is anything special. We're talking about the 8th worst scoring defense in the NFL through 2 weeks. But again, we're also talking about taking on an opponent that is the worst offense in scoring in the entire league. That's the reason that they're a good pickup this week. They're a waiver wire ad for sure. If you've got better defensive options, I would definitely play them. But Minnesota's defense is taking on a great matchup next week, and that's why they're my bonus defensive pickup in preparation for week 4. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered before week 3 fantasy football. And if you want to see the top 12 tight end rankings in week 3 fantasy football, click on this video right here.